from one take on what happened at Galwan and how India should respond to a completely different one. And this is a very, very provocative question, a very thought-provoking question, may I say. Did the bloodshed in Galwan Valley last week have its roots in fresh water? More specifically, in China's desperate need to ensure abundant freshwater supplies from the Indus River and its tributaries. And you would remember that most of the Indus water tributaries sort of originate in Tibet and then flow southwards, some of them into India, some of them into Pakistan, and then eventually into the Arabian Sea. A series of recent world events have sparked speculation that China's need to ensure fresh water to manufacture silicon chips may have escalated the situation in Galwan. Remember, the United States recently had set a bunch of curbs on a Taiwanese company, which happens to be the world's largest chip maker. These changes would hit China hard and make it necessary for China to ramp up its own manufacture of silicon chips, for which, of course, it needs a huge supply of fresh water. Now, analysts say that China wants to control the waters of the Indus River system. Many of those rivers go south into India and from India into Pakistan and then eventually into the Arabian Sea. What China wants to do is to, A, divert the flow of those rivers, as well as give it access to the dams, the massive dams that China is building both on its side of the LAC, as well as, of course, the massive dams that China is building in Gilgit, which is in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Now, this latest deal was signed less than a week before the LAC clashes. Somebody who has put forth this hypothesis, one of the few who's put forth this hypothesis, is Iqbal Malhotra. He's an author and a veteran documentary filmmaker. He's also the author of the new book, The Red Fear. Thanks very much, Mr. Malhotra, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Not many people have put up the hypotheses that you have put up, and that is the underlying reason for China's premeditated attack in Galwan, as well as other parts of eastern Ladakh over the last month or so, not just the 15th of June attack that happened in Galwan. The underlying reason is its need for abundant freshwater sources. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, thank you, Zaka. Actually, the story goes back to 1950, when the Chinese invaded Aksai Chin. They were looking for the source of the Karkash River, which flowed into the Tarim River, which was part of the location where the Chinese nuclear program was going to be tested. So China actually created this entire fiction about building a road through Tibet, because the road into Tibet was only coming into Western Tibet, and Western Tibet is about 1,500 kilometers away from Lhasa. So the primary reason was the waters of the Karkash River. The secondary reason was that Aksai Chin was and is an amazing source of uranium, thorium, beryllium, and molybdenum ores, petroleum, and gold. And finally, there was the issue. Today, China is facing a water shortage, and it has invested about $13 billion in building 2 dams on the Indus River near Gilgit. And these dams have to ensure that water flow is not halted to them. Now, India has the right to tap 20% of the water of the run-of-the-river water of the Indus River. We can alter the flow if we wish to do that, and that will seriously imperil those dams. So China is looking to control the Shyok River, the Indus River, the Nubra River, and the Changchemo River, which actually feeds into the Shyok River along with the Galwan River.
So what should India then do? I mean, if this is the underlying reason, because this has been not talked about as much as some of the other reasons about, the military differential and China wanting to put India in its place, the closeness of India and the US in a strategic embrace, so on and so forth. Many of those things have been discussed ad nauseum. If this is indeed the underlying reason, what options does India have to respond to this?
It's an existential issue for India, and we have to muster up a very robust defense. And the time for appeasement of China is now over. We've got to confront China as our #1 enemy, and we have to protect the waters of Ladakh. We have to protect the Siachen Glacier, because the Siachen Glacier holds 100 million acre feet of fresh water, enough to feed the current needs of Delhi for over 55 years. So we have no choice but to defend ourselves and to defend our natural resources.
And that includes if the Chinese are refusing to vacate parts, certainly, for example, they're refusing to vacate between Finger 4 and Finger 8. That means that India forcibly pushes them back to the status quo ante.
But let's look at it realistically. Where are the Chinese? They're sitting in Indian territory. All of Aksai Chin is Indian territory.
Yeah.
The farmers of Aksai Chin used to pay land revenue to the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir. The currency that was used in Aksai Chin was the Indian rupee. The soldiers were recruited for the Maharaja's army were recruited from Ladakh. What are the grounds on the basis of which China has laid this claim? But we have just vacated Aksai Chin right from 1950 because we were forced to sacrifice it at the altar of our policy of non-alignment. Mr. Nehru did that.
All right, Mr. Iqbal Chand Malhotra, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much. You've clearly given a lot of us, our viewers, a lot of food for thought. We'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for joining us here on Viewpoint with that very interesting and very different take from what we've heard about the origins or the underlying reasons for this fresh flare-up at the line of actual control. Talking